My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years now. Every year at the end of summer, my boyfriend's family has a beach trip. They have a cute cottage that they go to visit a few times a year. Last year I was unable to join, but this year I was able to make it. I've met his family before many times and we get along well, so I was looking forward to it. While I was packing, I was sure to include nicer dresses in case we went out and even included a more modest bikini than I would usually wear. This one is still a bikini, but is full coverage unlike my others. I know his family can be a little more conservative, so I kept that in mind when packing. I even went over everything I packed with my boyfriend. On the trip was my BF and I, his younger brother, his older brother, his sister-in-law, and his parents. The first day went by really well. Our flight didn't have any issues, we unpacked, got settled, and all went out for dinner. The next day we had planned to go out on the boat. So I put on my bikini and had a cover up. No one said anything to me as we were leaving, or even when we were on the boat. I spent the whole day in my bikini without a single comment. It wasn't until that night I realized people had an issue with it. We were all drinking on the boat, with the exception of my BFS sister-in-law because she's pregnant. And we continued drinking when we got back. So after dinner, we were all pretty wasted. When we were talking about our time on the boat, my BFS dad made a comment about how everyone was staring at me because of my slutty bikini. I was embarrassed and just laughed it off, but then everyone else chimed in to comment on it. His mom laughed and said it was fine, that she would wear nothing if she were young again. But then his younger brother said that I basically was wearing nothing. I defended myself and said it was the most conservative suit I had. And then his older brother said that it didn't leave anything to the imagination. And that if he were single, he would have tried to steal me away. That comment made me pretty uncomfortable, and I could tell it made his wife uncomfortable too. I asked if she would wear bikinis on the trip and my BFS dad interrupted and said that she did, but it was different. My BF just laughed along with all of this, didn't even see anything wrong with it. When I told him to say something, he said that I did look like I was trying to get dick down. Well, that comment was the last straw. I went to our room. I wanted to leave early after all that. But we only had a few days, so I just pushed it in the back of my mind and kept to myself the rest of our trip. I know they were just joking, but what they said really bothered me and made me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why my BF doesn't get that. He just keeps saying that they were joking around. But it obviously wasn't very funny to me, so now he's saying I ruined the trip by moping around the rest of the time. So I live in a flat with 3 other people, childhood best friend, a guy from my uni course and his cousin. For the most part we get along really well and rarely have disagreements. However, this has been a real point of contention lately. About 6 months ago I began a relationship with a guy I've known for a couple of years. I know it's still a fairly new relationship, but I really like him, he makes me really happy and we're pretty serious about each other. Up until recently, he would come visit me at my flat 3 to 4 times a week. This was mostly due to the fact that I have chronic fatigue and going on proper dates can be really challenging for me. Instead of going out to dinner or a film or whatever, we'd just chill in my room or the living room. Watch TV and get takeout or cook together. I didn't really consult anyone about this say. All the other flatmates have their partners over as often if not more so, and he rarely spends the night and usually leaves before 10 p.m. because of his work schedule. So the issue, 2 weeks ago, comes to me and tells me that I need to stop having my boyfriend over because it's starting to get annoying. I asked her why and she said it's irritating to have someone who doesn't live there, skulking around all the time. I pointed out that her boyfriend sleeps over 3 nights a week and thus is here more often than mine, and she claimed that was different because they've been together for 11 years and are moving in together once her lease is up. She said she's discussed it with the other flatmates and they've all agreed he needs to stop coming over or he has to chip into the rent, because it's getting ridiculous. Note, nobody else's partner chips in on the rent. I confirmed with the other 2 that yes, this is an agreement they've made. Though my best friend said basically made her agree by threatening to cut off the Wi-Fi and utilities, which are in her name, if she didn't. I asked if this rule applies to everyone, but apparently it's just me. I pointed out that it's unfair and was basically told to deal with it. My potential assholery, I've begun loudly insisting that if my partner isn't allowed to come over, neither is anybody else's. If I answer the door to anyone's partner, I'll send them away. If I come home and someone's partner is there, I'll make a point to mention that I thought we weren't having partners who don't pay rent over anymore. I've asked boyfriend over and over how much rent he's paying and pretend to be affronted and make a fuss when he says he doesn't. Everyone's pretty pissed at me and is telling me I'm being unreasonable. I know I'm being petty, but I think it's unreasonable that there's one rule for me and another for everyone else, and I'm trying to make that point. Am I really the asshole here? Some questions people keep asking. If I knew of something my boyfriend was doing to be annoying // if anyone had told me that he was doing something, I'd have included it. I'm not aware of anything he does, and when I ask why I doesn't like him, I just get a shrug and just do. I will also state I'm bi, and she's never had an issue with any female partners I've had. We don't hang out in the living room much. We literally only use it if there's something we want to watch that I can't get on my bedroom TV and there's nobody else in there. We use the kitchen more often than the living room, but honestly even that isn't that often. We eat far too much takeout pizza rip. A lot of people seem confused, so just clearing up who's who in the situation. The one who brought all this up is not my best friend. Not to get too much into a tangent, but basically just over a year ago I was moving out of halls at university and was looking for a new place, so we decided to move in together. At the same time, a dude from my course was looking for a flat share. We couldn't find a 3-bed but found a really nice 4-bed, and he mentioned his cousin was also looking for somewhere to live, so she got on board too. I only met her last year and we don't really know each other very well. By chronic fatigue I mean chronic fatigue syndrome. Sorry, that's apparently so unclear. My wife and I bought a 4-bedroom house in PA that my son lives in. Our son went to college in PA and wanted to stay in the area, so we bought the house as a second home. We live in NJ and commute into Manhattan for work. We figured that he would have a place to live and we could visit every so often and spend some quality time together. We pay the taxes and services / maintenance on the house. Our son pays for his groceries and the house utilities. All was going well for a few years. Our son meets a girl and they get serious. We met her and she seems nice enough. They announce their engagement and she moves into the house with our son. Now for the problem, the wedding. We hold a little get-to-know-you barbecue at the PA house. My son and daughter are there, as are our son's fiancé and her parents. And sisters. We all seem to be getting along well. My wife, daughter and the fiancé go into the house along with her mother and sisters and my son. A few minutes later my wife and daughter come out and are really upset. They come over and tell me we're leaving and driving back to NJ. I try to find out what happened. Once we get back to NJ and they calm down, they tell me that our son and his fiancée along with her family don't want us at the wedding. According to what I was told, we're not their kind of people. I was livid. I called my son and asked him WTH this was about. He tells me that her family feel that we are not good enough and will embarrass them at a family wedding, and that we are all uninvited from the wedding. I let a week go by to calm myself down and drive back to the PA house. The new future in-laws are in the house along with the fiancé. It appears that they all moved into the house. They ask me why I'm there. I tell them that since we aren't invited to the wedding, I was coming over to talk to my son. They tell me to leave their house. I lost it and told them that they had 30 days to get out. Tell my son I'm selling the house and he could find somewhere else to live with all of you. I go to a realtor in town and list the house for sale. They call my son at work and tell him what I said. Apparently they thought that he owned the house. He calls me and asks why I'm selling his house. I tell him I paid for it along with the taxes on it and it is mine. He was living there rent-free, but since he doesn't want us in his new life, he has to get out. I tell him the same as I told his future in-laws. They have 30 days to get out, then I'll get a lawyer and get them evicted. Am I the for taking a hard stance on this? He is my son, but the in-laws seem to take over and we no longer count. 6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, She kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth. Because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle. At her wedding, Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home.